So Johnny Depp is filing for summary judgment. We just saw yesterday a calendar control order was uploaded in the Virginia court. I'm going to go ahead and share that so that folks who haven't seen it already can do so. It's a very short document, and all that it shows us is that Johnny Depp is the one who is requesting that this be done. He's requesting a hearing in March on a summary judgment motion that has been allowed. And then attached to this document is a briefing schedule. So we see from that Johnny Depp is going to have to file his brief by February the 25th, so 3 weeks. And then Amber Heard will have a couple of weeks to respond to that. Then he will have a week to respond to her. Then they will go into the hearing. That is all that we know at this point. We don't know what the nature of the challenge is. However, I do have a pretty strong suspicion about what we're going to see. So part of what I wanted to do in this video is just give you a little bit of an overview of what summary judgment is all about, and then talk specifically about what I predict we are going to see when the briefs are filed. Consider this me laying down my marker, and then once we have the briefs to read, we will be able to see how I did. So summary judgment is a process where a party is basically saying, even if you take all of my opponent's evidence and assume that the jury would believe it and fully credit it, that it would not be enough to establish their cause of action. Therefore, I am entitled to a judgment as a matter of law. An important thing to know about a summary judgment is that it's not a process for resolving factual disputes. This is why I do not believe that the summary judgment has anything to do with Johnny Depp's claims against Amber Heard. It is theoretically possible for a party to move for summary judgment on their own claims and say, basically, there's no point in having a trial because the evidence is undisputed and I would be entitled to a verdict if the jury believes all of this. But that really doesn't happen very often. And in this particular case, there's incredible factual disputes, obviously, between Johnny Depp and Amber Heard that go to the core of the defamation claim, the main one being who abused who. So that isn't the type of claim that's going to be able to get resolved without a jury. The idea is that juries are necessary to resolve factual disputes. If there is no factual dispute, then the question just becomes, how does the law apply to these facts? And that's why a judge is able to decide it pre-trial in a summary judgment motion. So I think of summary judgment as essentially put up or shut up time. It's different from the challenges that we have seen so far in the case, the plea and bar and the demurrer, as Virginia calls them. Those are challenges to the pleadings. They're challenges to the allegations. We saw, for example, when Johnny Depp filed his plea and bar against Amber Heard's counterclaim, he argued with respect to the bot army claims that essentially, even if Amber Heard was able to prove at trial everything that she alleged in her counterclaim, it would not be enough to constitute an actionable claim against Johnny Depp under Virginia law. That unless she had alleged that Johnny Depp purposefully, harassed Amber Heard or used the bots to employ obscene language and threats and things along those lines, which she did not allege, that there was not going to be any basis for her to recover. And so he did win in that. The judge agreed that, yes, her allegations were insufficient to show a violation of Virginia law. Therefore, they were not allowed to proceed. Summary judgment is, bearing in mind, we've already passed that initial hurdle. Okay, so what survived Johnny Depp's plea and bar were Amber Heard's counterclaims that Johnny Depp defamed her via Adam Waldman's statements to the Daily Mail. So summary judgment is essentially put up or shut up time. The judge has already agreed that, yes, if Amber Heard is able to prove all these things that she's alleged, that she would be entitled to recover against Johnny Depp. Summary judgment is about, is she going to be able to prove those allegations? you're going to read, if you're doing research on this or looking around at kind of what the legal standard is for summary judgment, you're going to read a lot of things that can be a little bit confusing about whether there's a genuine issue of material fact in dispute, whether party is entitled to judgment as a matter of law, inferring the facts in the light most favorable to the non-moving party, things like that that can be a little confusing. I think the best way to think about summary judgment is this. Johnny Depp is basically saying, here's all of Amber Heard's evidence on her counterclaim. And we believe that even if we didn't dispute this, and even if the jury gave it 100% credit, found it completely credible, believed it all, it still would not be enough to entitle her to judgment on her defamation claim. So it's not necessarily saying there isn't a factual dispute. It's saying that even if we did not dispute, so he's not closing the door to disputing it at trial. He's just saying, even if we didn't dispute it, it wouldn't be enough to entitle her to a judgment for defamation. So what could that possibly be about? Well, I have a pretty strong suspicion that it has to do with her agency theory. So as you'll recall, the only causes of action that she still has against Johnny Depp are based on statements that Adam Waldman made to the Daily Mail. In order for those to be legally attributable to Johnny Depp, so that he's responsible for something that somebody else did, she has to prove an agency relationship. That consists of an arrangement where one person authorizes another person to act on their behalf. And if that happens, then when the person does act on their behalf, you're legally responsible for that. So a classic example of this is in the employment context. You hire somebody to do a particular job. You may have policies and rules about how they are to perform that job. You have a certain amount of control over how they do that, what their hours are. Do they need to wear a uniform? All kinds of things like that. And so then the idea is that if your employee, while they're on the job, does something, maybe negligently injures somebody, you as the employer are the one that is ultimately going to be responsible for that, because that employee was acting at your instruction, under your control, and for your benefit. So at the same time, just because a person is an agent, it doesn't mean that the principal is responsible for everything that the agent does, right? If you have an employee and your employee clocks out, stops at the bar on the way home, has a couple of beers, and then gets in an accident and injures somebody, the employer is not responsible for that. It's outside of the scope of employment. It's not within either their work day or their contemplated job duties. It may be contrary to policies that the employer has. But ultimately, the bottom line is that the employee isn't on the job at that point in time. So that's a situation where the employee is acting outside of the scope of the agency. In order to prove her defamation claim against Johnny Depp, Amber Heard has taken on the responsibility of proving, number one, that Johnny Depp authorized Adam Waldman to speak to the press on his behalf, and number two, that the particular statements he made were within the scope of the understanding that the parties had about the types of things that Adam Waldman would say. Agency it's at its essence a contractual agreement. That doesn't mean that it always has to be in writing, although it frequently is. For example, a power of attorney document is a type of agency relationship. It can be broad, it can be limited. You might authorize somebody to, for example, if you're out of the country for an extended length of time. I've had this situation where then they need to, say, close a real estate transaction. So because they're not available, they would sign a limited power of attorney that authorizes some third party to go ahead and sign the documents on their behalf. It doesn't mean that person can go sign any and all documents on their behalf, go, empty their bank account or anything like that. That is outside the scope of the agency agreement. So that's going to be the challenge that Amber Heard has had really from the inception with this counterclaim. She has to prove the nature of the understanding between Johnny Depp and Adam Waldman about what Adam Waldman's role is and what type of limitations or restrictions or conditions has Johnny Depp put on that. And the basic problem is that all of that is confidential. That is classic attorney-client privileged information. It's only arises through communications between Johnny Depp and Adam Waldman that are presumptively not going to be available for third parties to look into. We have already seen in the course of the discovery litigation that Amber Heard has sought to compel production. She wants Adam Waldman deposed. She wanted Adam Waldman to have to produce agreements, emails, communications, a significant amount of material dealing with his representation of Johnny Depp. And Johnny Depp has, by and large, successfully defended against those attempts on the grounds of attorney-client privilege. The bottom line is that Johnny Depp is under no obligation whatsoever to waive his privilege in order to permit Amber Heard to sue him. So he doesn't have to give her that information. She is the one who chose to assert this claim and assumed the burden to be able to prove it. The problem is that she's almost certainly not going to be able to do so because all of the evidence that she would need to be able to prove an agency relationship is going to be shielded by attorney-client privilege. The bottom line is that if she were actually concerned about getting recovery for these statements that Adam Waldman made and not just interested in clapping back at Johnny Depp with her "I'm worth twice as much as you are" counterclaim, she would have sued Adam Waldman for these statements directly. She assumed basically this additional burden of having to prove that Johnny Depp is legally responsible for Adam Waldman's statements that she was almost certainly never going to be in a position to be able to prove. So this just underscores what many of us have been saying for quite a long time, that Amber Heard doesn't appear to have a very good long-term strategy or really very good strategic thinking at all, to be frank. Asserting the counterclaim, as we're going to see, never had very much of a good prospect for success for getting her any kind of positive outcome. But it's been extremely damaging to her in terms of the scope of the discovery that it opened up. By filing this counterclaim against Johnny Depp, she's opened the door to discovery into her reputation, her earnings, her basically other factors that may have contributed to why, if she's not working, why that would be the case. So a lot of doors that otherwise would not have been relevant to be opened were in fact opened by this counterclaim, and really never had any good prospect of it going anywhere. So that's, in a nutshell, what I am anticipating that we will see from the summary judgment motion. Final thoughts: is it strong? We don't know what the evidence is going to be, but my suspicion is, yeah, it is going to be a strong motion because of how, again, shielded the evidence that she needs to prove her claim is going to be from her ability to discover it. The fact that Adam Waldman is Johnny Depp's lawyer is simply not going to be enough to prove that, by virtue of being his lawyer, that Johnny Depp had any sort of authority, pre-notice, or anything at all having to do with these statements that Adam Waldman made, as opposed to Adam Waldman just deciding on his own that he was going to go ahead and take these steps. So we will see when the briefs are filed, but that's what I'm anticipating. If I were Going to bet on the outcome right now, I would say, personally, I would not expect to see Amber Heard's counterclaims going forward to trial, but we will see. Thanks, guys. Let me know if you have any questions, and we'll see you soon.